Breaking news coming out of Derby County, and David Ozoh will be missing the remainder of his loan spell at Derby County with a muscle injury that he picked up versus Millwall at Pride Park Stadium just a week or so ago. It's a very, very disappointing blow for Derby County, an even worse blow for John Eustace. As Derby County look to prepare for the Middlesbrough game this weekend, they need to find a formula and fast. Now, obviously, Derby County's form has been very, very bad since the 26th of December, but ultimately the downhill slope started back when David Ozoh picked up his first injury. Realistically, we've never recovered, and I think this is just another showing of why the January window was not good enough for Derby County, because David Ozoh was out injured. We knew that he would be on the way back, but he was out injured. Why did we not go out and pick up a similar type of player to David Ozoh to sort of fill in that hole if he wasn't able to get fit? And worst case scenario, that player sat on the bench, or that player played alongside David Ozoh. Like, worst case scenario is we had an extra midfield option anyway. And the unfortunate thing that we now find now is that Derby County have two options. Option number one is go to the youth academy and look at some of the midfielders in that setup. And option number two is go down the free agent market. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people sort of going, well, there's loads of players available free agent wise. Why don't we go and have a look at that? And there'll be a load of people going, let's take a look at the youth academy, which, of course, there's plenty of players in that youth academy who could potentially step up and make a difference for Derby County. You look at someone of Darren Robinson's calibre, ultimately not had a great loan spell at Hartlepool, which was earlier this season, but is a player who's played for the first team before. You've got Alex Stepian-Iwumene, who started the season out with the first team in pre-season before Derby County started bringing in players. Obviously made his first senior appearance versus Matlock in that first pre-season friendly, where I thought he was quite good. You've got players on the likes of Harry Hawkins. You've got Freddie Turley, who could also step into that role, and Morton Spencer. Now, I believe Harry Hawkins is out on loan at the moment. You can correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but I believe he's out on loan. But you look at the midfield options just from the under-21s. You've got Darren Robinson, Stepian-Iwumene, Morton Spencer and Freddie Turley. If you then want to look sort of further down, which obviously is that possibility, and you go to that under-18 side, you've got the likes of Jerome Richards, you've got Owen Eames, you've got Cruz Allen, Nairo McAndrew. There's a load of players available within those sort of setups. And now, I'm not saying that Derby County should replace David Ozoh with Cruz Allen, because obviously Cruz Allen and David Ozoh are much different players. They have different roles in teams, and what they do is very, very different. So if you are going to call up a Cruz Allen to be a first team player for the course of the next 12 games, then obviously that's a big discussion topic to have, because then you've got to figure out, well, who's going to take that holding midfield role? Who's going to take that sort of defensive approach? And you've obviously got Ebo Adams, who slots in perfectly. You've then obviously got a Ben Osborne, Liam Thompson, a Jake Rooney, who can step into that sort of holding midfield role. And do I think that Derby County can do that? And do I think it's going to be good enough? I don't really know. I think the big problem that we have at the moment is that with losing David Ozoh, it's another player off the list who was a massive, massive player for us. And I'm not saying that David Ozoh has been sort of amazing for Derby, because he spent a lot of his time injured. Now, the problem that we have is it's like we're in such a difficult spot, and this is why I keep going back to talk about the role that David Clowes, Stephen Pearce and Paul Warne have played in this squad. And you can bring the recruitment team in if you want, although I don't necessarily... I'd need to know more about the process of signings before we get onto them. But it's one of those where even if you add Ozoh back in and say add Ozoh and Clark back into the squad depth chart, we're still lacking numbers in midfield. We're still lacking numbers at the back, and it's a difficult situation that we find ourselves in. And I will never understand why we didn't make more moves in the January window. We replaced Sonny Bradley going out. Well, we replaced Sonny Bradley and Aaron Cashin leaving with Langas and Clark, and obviously then Curtis Nelson had his injury as well, which you could argue Langas is his replacement, but whichever, right? We then obviously are in that position where we let James Collins go, who we replaced with Selverson, which is fine. Dejan Brown got injured, who you could argue we've replaced with Kmar Roof. So we have improved that area. But then you go to the midfield. We've lost Ozoh in there. Obviously, Ben Osborne's sort of hit and miss of whether he's fit. And at the moment, with Elder being injured, he's sort of got to play that left-back role. Chiwa's gone back to Wolves and then gone out to Huddersfield. Harness is now playing sort of in one of the wide areas. So he's been moved out of that midfield depth option. And then we brought in Armstrong, which is perfectly fine if Armstrong's going to play football. And at the moment, we haven't seen Armstrong play enough, in my opinion. But I do think that's about to change. I think the midfield three on Saturday is going to be Ibu, Kenzo and Armstrong. I think that's the only way that John Eustace can really set up this midfield. Maybe Thompson could play. I'd have no problem with Thompson playing at all. But then who's going to sit on the bench? Because as it stands right now, if I put Derby squad depth chart back on screen now, our bench would be Vickers, Rooney, Armstrong, Barkhuizen, Jackson or Harness, Roof. 6 players. Obviously, if Clark's fit, Clark can go on there. We know Blackett-Taylor's not fit. Elder and Phillips are 2 more you could put on, which takes you to 8. So there's still a number on the bench to fill within that midfield role. Who will it be? I don't know. I'd love to see. I'd love to see Derby County just go, you know what? Let's just chuck Cruz Allen in. Let's let him start a game. Let's go Ibu and Kenzo as sort of like deeper lying midfielders. Obviously, Kenzo given a little bit more freedom than Ibu, and then have Allen as that number 10. I know Allen can play either wing as well. We've done that for the 21s. He's done it for the 18s. Allen can also play deeper. I've seen that myself when I was at Derby when he was still playing for the under-16s, and obviously he then moved on up to the 18s where he's done a really, really good job across both divisions. So it's one of those for me where why not chuck an Allen in? Why not chuck a Freddie Turley on the bench or something like that? We need options in midfield. We need forward options. Like, I know Lennon Wilden didn't have the greatest loan spell at Boston United, but who's to say he wouldn't be able to step up in the Championship? My argument has always been for any youth academy player that comes through at any club is you never know if they can play to the level of your team unless you play them in your team. I've always thought that loan spells are always a little bit disingenuous based on a player. Like, obviously, Dejan Brown went to Gateshead for the second half of last season, performed amazingly. But could you, if you'd have sent him to another team in the National League, or whatever league they're in, I believe it is the National League, would he have performed to the same standard? Maybe not, because they may have played a different way. He may have had a different role in the team. And that's why I always think, and that's why I bleat on about giving Jake Rooney an opportunity, giving Freddie Turley an opportunity, giving Cruz Allen, now McAndrew, giving all of them an opportunity. Because if you judge everything based on a loan spell, you're never really going to know if they're good enough. And then we could end up where the players end up being better than what we are, sort of thing, and things like that. And that's sort of the situation Derby County may find themselves in over the course of the next few months and stuff like that, where they sort of have to use that youth academy and they have to use those sorts of players, because our injury list is, 8 strong? Washington, Brown, Nelson, Wilson, Ozoh, Clark, Ward, Blackett-Taylor, Elder, Phillips. So it's a decent-sized injury list. Obviously, I know Washington is fit and training, but he's deregistered due to the injury problems he had earlier in the season. Whether he'll be re-registered again, I don't know, but I can't see him being a major part of John Eustace's plans going forward. If Elder and Phillips are fit, it obviously changes the conversation a little bit, but we're still going to need extra bodies in midfield, whether Elder's fit or Phillips is fit or whatever. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County content heading your way. We're at Middlesbrough on Saturday. It's going to be a difficult task. I did a preview earlier on. Was it either yesterday evening or this morning? So make sure you go and check that out, and I'll catch you in my next video.